Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about The Maze Runner? Stick around and find out. Okay. I'm Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions with an uncut review of The Maze Runner. Well, let's see here. Thomas wakes up in an elevator. This is according to the IMDb synopsis. Remembering nothing but his own name, he emerges in a world of about 60 teen boys who have learned to survive in a completely enclosed environment, subsisting on their own agriculture and supplies. A new boy arrives every 30 days. The original group has been in the Glade for 2 years, trying to find a way to escape through the maze that surrounds their living space. They have begun to give up hope. Then, a comatose girl arrives with a strange note, and their world begins to change. All right, so let's talk about the story, the script, the pacing. The story and tension in this movie is based on concealing and then slowly revealing information. Kind of like a monster movie, you know, where you've got the threat out there, but you don't really know what the threat is. And then over time, the nature of that threat, the nature of that monster, or whatever it is slowly revealed over time. And now there is a monster in this movie, but it's not what I would call a monster movie. It's about them finding themselves in this crazy situation, not remembering anything about their past, and trying to piece together what the heck happened and why they are in this place in the middle of this maze. And for a movie like that, the pacing of how you give out that information, how quickly you give it out, and how quickly you expect your audience to be processing it and keeping up with you, and you know that it can, if you do that wrong, then that can really screw up your movie. If your audience ever gets bored, or if the audience ever gets ahead of you, you're in big trouble. And I didn't find that to be true in my experience of The Maze Runner. I felt that the info, the pace at which they were giving it out to me was really good. The dialogue side of the script, you know, it's mostly solid, but sometimes cliche and often uninteresting by itself. I want to be clear, by itself. I think the dialogue in this, if you're just looking at the written page, probably isn't all that captivating, but the subtext is what and the performances are what drive these scenes forward, not so much the dialogue that's actually coming out of their mouths. And so while we're on that topic, let's talk about the cast, the performances. Dylan O'Brien, who I didn't know from anything, I had to look up online. Apparently this guy is from Teen Wolf. I did see a little while back, there was, you know, like, I think I tried out half of an episode, and I'm like, oh crap, this is so not my kind of show. It's like it's not on the CW, but it's a very CW-y feeling kind of, I think it's like an MTV show or something like that, about a bunch of pretty boys who are werewolves or something. I don't know. Anyway, but Dylan O'Brien from Teen Wolf is Thomas in this movie, the male lead. And despite having the background of being in a show like Teen Wolf, he was a very relatable character, I felt. Not because he was like in particularly representing the everyman, but maybe just because he wasn't model posing, which, you know, which I happen to find really frustrating when I watch like a CW show, and I see that a lot, what I call like model posing. They get these really beautiful people in there, and they're having their dramatic moments, and it's just all very contrived and terrible. And which is why I really want to like Arrow, but I don't at this point. I'm going to give it a try this fall, but we'll see. Anyway, but there was no model posing coming from Dylan O'Brien, which I really appreciated. Really no model posing from anybody, despite having a very young cast of up-and-coming actors. Thomas Brody Sangster, this is a guy whose face you'll recognize, but you might not know what he's from. He's been in a bunch of things. The first thing I think he was known for was Nanny McPhee. He was one of the kids in like the first Nanny McPhee movie. And he's been in other stuff since then. I found out on IMDb he's on Game of Thrones, which I don't watch, but I'm sure that probably is what's kind of giving him a step into big movies like The Maze Runner, being on a show like that. And then Will Poulter was another one that I was like, oh, I know that face. I know that face. Where have I seen him? And he was Eustace, I think is the name of the character in the Chronicles of Narnia: Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think Eustace is the name. He's a really obnoxious kid. Anyway, but I was just trying to figure out where have I seen that kid, and like most of these kids are all British actors, half of which are doing American accents, and man, it's that aside, the accent thing aside, I don't know why, American actors have so many problems with accents, but yet Brits and Australians and stuff, they do these rockin' amazing American accents you can tell the difference in. But accent skills aside, these are solid actors, solid performances. And they have interesting faces, which is a hot commodity in Hollywood for decades now. And that's why I suspect that what we're seeing in this movie is a possible showcase of tomorrow's stars. Because, like I said, they're solid actors and they have interesting faces, and that's really important on the screen. So take note of the cast here. It'll be interesting to see where they all go in the future. Another thing related to the casting and the direction specifically is that I don't think these actors were asked to do something they couldn't do. One of my pet peeves, I just finished binge watching season 4 of The Walking Dead, and they had a couple of young actresses in that show that I think were asked to do some things that where they were at in terms of their skill level, in terms of their life experience, they weren't able to convincingly, in my mind, bring to the screen. There was just kind of like some kid acting going on. I think you really got to shy away from asking child actors, unless they are like freaking amazing, once in a lifetime Dakota Fanning types. I think you got to shy away from asking your young actors to handle these really heavy emotions and crying and stuff like that, because some kids they just can't do it, and that's not a slam on them so much as I think it's a slam on the scripting. And if you're going to write that kind of script, you probably shouldn't even attempt it unless you have a Dakota Fanning type. But this script didn't ask for those kinds of scenes. Despite that, I was really emotionally invested in the characters. Maybe because the actors were not asked to go, in these crazy, heavy emotional directions. There's one kid in particular, the character's name is Chuck, who was a very endearing character and had a scene that actually brought me to tears, even though he, as an actor and as a character, was not required in that scene to produce tears, and to really go to a heavy emotional place. And so I think I guess bottom line, what I'm saying is this movie and this script and this director seem to know how to use younger actors in a way that's more realistic, I guess, for lack of a better word, and compelling and makes them easy to invest in. Yeah, just really, really great use of this kind of young cast. And on that note, I should say that I am so sick of these, young adult novel adaptation movies. I mean, it started with Twilight, which really got us off to a rough start, you have to admit. And then you've got The Host, you've got Divergent, you've got, I just saw The Giver, I'm just getting tired of these things where they cast these, these pretty boy and pretty girl kind of, model types. It's all very CW feeling. And there was very little of that going on in this movie. This movie was a little bit more in the vein of Hunger Games, where it was based on a young adult property, but it's presented in a way that's appealing to, I think, people that are not necessarily into that kind of fiction. It's just a cast that happens to be at that kind of certain age, that young adult coming of age type stage of life, but otherwise it didn't feel like this young adult type of story, and so I really enjoyed that about it. There was no cheesy, very shallow romance type stuff. My gosh, I just watched the first 20 minutes of Divergent. No, not the first 20 minutes. I gave Divergent, I think, 2/3 of my time of the movie to watch. And anyway, this just isn't like that. It's very enjoyable for people who don't like those kinds of stories. Let's talk about CGI. Okay, well, CGI looks like CGI. Now, they do some good things. They use some shaky cams, to kind of hide the CGI quality, which isn't bad. I'm just cursed with an eye that really picks out CGI easily. It's like, yeah, that obviously is not a practical effect. That obviously is CGI, And so for me, that was like, okay, but shaky cam helped. Oh, but they used a little too much shaky cam sometimes. It's a little too much like bouncy cam, like what the crap is going on? And maybe when I've got it home on Blu-ray and the screen's a little bit smaller, it's not my entire field of vision that they're taking up. Maybe it'll work a little bit better for me. But as it was in the theater, I was like, whoa, can we like just settle down and let's get some steady cam action going on there, But anyway, I think that the editing and the direction in the movie help the stunts and the visuals, and they bring intensity to the experience. So it's not just visual effects that make this movie like intense and crazy and cool. I think the editing and the direction really help that quite a bit. I do wish there was a greater variety of creatures in the maze. There's basically one creature in the maze that they have to deal with, one type of creature, and I wish there were more. The obstacles were interesting and surprising at times, so that aspect of the maze was very cool and like what the crap, and very riveting and intense. So that was neat stuff. As far as music and sound go, the score I found forgettable, but it does the important job of enhancing emotion. I don't need to hum your themes when I'm driving home, but I do want your score to help me feel what I'm supposed to feel in the story. There was also a few great sound design choices that, in the absence of visuals, because remember in this movie, they're not giving us all the information right away, they're hiding a lot of information and just dealing it out slowly over time. And so they leave a lot of the visuals to your imagination for a while until they're ready to show those cards. But in the meantime, they use sound design to help your imagination kind of go, what the crap is that? And wonder what you're going to see around the next corner. It stimulates the imagination and the fear of the unknown. So that really worked for me. Now, what in terms of philosophical or moral relevance, might this movie have to stimulate conversation or thought about? Well, not a whole lot, I don't think. There's an interesting phrase, "wicked is good," in the movie, which is related to the initials WCKD. And that's, I won't go into the story about what that's, I don't want to spoil anything, but I do think that's an interesting phrase. Wicked is good. That's something that the characters are asked to accept, and I'll let you, when you watch the movie, see that it's not exactly what it sounds like when I say it. But anyway, yeah, that was interesting. We'll see where that goes in future movies, because this is clearly a story that is going to be told in multiple parts. That's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. So if you want to wait till the whole story is done, if you're that type, just wait on this one. But let's see here. Oh yeah, there's another idea presented in the movie, that what they did, what all these young adults did before having their memories wiped, it doesn't matter, that those people don't exist anymore. And that was specifically in the context of bad things that they had done. One character's trying to console another and saying, listen, whatever you did in the past, it doesn't matter, that person doesn't exist anymore. And I find that interesting. What, are we going to say the same thing about mean drunks? I know when I was talking to a friend a while back about, like, how he'll hang out with friends and they'll kind of be drinking and one of them be a jerk and stuff like that, and they'll do something or they'll say something that's really horrible, and they just kind of let it go, And I said, well, why don't you, like, sit and have a talk with them, later on? He's like, everybody knows they were drunk. It's not that big of a deal, And I'm just thinking to myself, well, they chose to drink that alcohol, and they chose to get themselves in that kind of state, so that they might be doing those kinds of things. Are they not responsible anymore just because they don't remember doing that thing? So I guess that brings to mind the question: if no one remembers that something evil happened, does that evil no longer require justice? And maybe in a world where there is no superior, all-knowing being that holds everyone accountable, that would be true. But I mean, if you believe that there is a God who is, aware of everything and is going to ultimately hold everybody to account, well then, it's not so easy to say, well, we don't remember that, so it's not a problem that it happened. I don't know. There's probably some more thinking and more factors involved in there that I haven't quite considered yet, but it was something that jumped out to me as being worthy of further thought. But I did have to search for those things, though. I think mostly this movie's just interesting, intense, and a fun experience. It's not going to be something that's going to leave you going, yeah, let me think about my life a little bit more. It's not really that kind of thing. In summary, if I were talking to myself about this movie, I would say, listen, Peter, you can wait and rent this one, but don't miss it. Put it on your agenda at some point, or as soon as it comes out in Redbox, bring it home and check it out, because it's a great evening of fun in your living room. It's a well-made sci-fi suspense flick. It's rated PG-13 for thematic elements and intense sequences of sci-fi violence and action, including some disturbing images. I give it a quality score of 8.5 out of 10 and a relevant score of 7.0 out of 10. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, want to share it, and want more like it. Also, please leave comments below. Are you planning to see this movie or skip it? Or if you did see it, what did you think? I'd be really interested to know. Finally, for info about our scoring system and tons of other content and community, visit ChristianGeekCentral.com. I hope you'll come and join us there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.